Okay, so first of all, an apology. It is already heading late into the afternoon, and I'm only just making a start on this. It's been one of those days where I feel like I need a personal assistant just to help me get through everything that I need to get done. Now, I realise it's taken a few days for me to get back to doing these interviews. I must admit, it's been kind of good to have a break after listening to Natalie's interview, and I really hadn't anticipated how much time was going to go into doing the interviews of the parents of Jack and Lily Sullivan. There was actually quite a lot going on in those interviews, which, when you actually stopped and started really looking at them, meant that there was so much more to talk about than I originally anticipated. I will be endeavouring to get some more videos out on Jack and Lily's case in the next couple of days. But right now I want to get back to Angelica while the first two interviews are still fresh in my mind. Also because I want to go from looking at these ones to having a look at Stephen and Tyler, and then potentially a few other family members. I'm guessing that there probably won't be many updates between now and when this goes to trial, given the amount of time that the defence team has spent on these frivolous motions. I'm surprised that we haven't had a response from the judge yet on the motions to suppress, although I find that promising because it means that this judge is going to be very thorough and very fair when all this does finally go to trial. Now, on that note, I should probably offer a bit of an apology to my Patreon members. I still have a bunch of documents that I need to upload for you. I just seem to be not managing my time as well as I would like at the moment. It appears, anyway. That said, if there are any documents for this case that you particularly want access to and they're not there in Patreon, throw me an email, and I'll add my email into the description section of this video. Just send me an email and I'll make sure that I prioritise that as my next upload on Patreon so that it's basically there for you to access. I should probably mention too, this isn't some shameless Patreon advertisement, give me money, all that sort of stuff. My Patreon is free, membership is free, uploads are free. You basically just go into your web browser, type in Patreon search, or you can click the description in my video, which will take you directly to my Patreon, which I think takes you directly to the membership. All you have to do to sign up is put in an email address, and that's all you need, and then you can just grab whatever documents that are available there. Like I said, if there is a particular document that you want access to, just drop me an email and I'll prioritise that and I'll drop it into Patreon as soon as I can. I haven't added any of the forensic photos in my Patreon. It just doesn't seem like my internet speeds are fast enough for me to bulk upload photos. My recommendation, if you are after photos, like forensic photos from Maddie's case that are free, if you go to gavinfish.com, he has a large number. He doesn't have all the forensic photos, but he has a large number of the forensic photos available for free. He does have documents and audio available also, but that is via paid membership. It's been my experience that because of his work commitments, he tends to be one of the last people to get hold of FOIA requests and doesn't really get around to updating his Patreon very much. Says me, who is so behind with uploading documents. So, if you see any listed documents on Gavin Fisher's page and you're not in a position to join his paid Patreon membership, like I said, drop me a line. I will find my copy of that document if it's not on Patreon already and pop it on there for you. Okay, that's well and truly enough yabbering from me for this part of the video. Particularly given that I've got probably about an hour to get as much done as possible before the dogs decide it's dinner time. And of course, Mouse's discovery is that you can get anything you want if you start barking. So long as you make sure you explain what you want. Stand by the back door and bark? That's pretty clear. Go and stand near the kitchen because he knows he's not allowed in the kitchen when I'm preparing meals or preparing their dinner. So he will go and stand by the kitchen and just start barking until I go and do his dinner. Okay, so this is the second interview that was done with Angelica. This was done on the same day as the interview with Natalie, so it was done on the 7th of March. Now, I'm just going to jump in ahead and say thank you to those of you who are fluent in Spanish, because I'm definitely going to need your assistance in the comments section in terms of what's been left out with translations. So on that note, let's just jump into this interview with Angelica.
All right, the date is March 7th, 2024. The time is 1:07 p.m. We're at 4012 Santa Maria Drive, apartment 107. It's myself, Detective Morris, Detective Reyes Soto, and Angelica Negro. That's right. Reference to case number 24001896. Just tell her the last time that we spoke, she swore to tell the truth, and but the truth, best of your knowledge.
La última vez que ustedes hablaron, estoy seguro que dicen la verdad y solo la verdad y cosas así. ¿Se acuerda de eso?
And that still applies now,
Y
so.
todo eso aplica en esa entrevista también. ¿Se acuerdan?
Sí.
Okay, so we talked before. I want to go into more details about the night of Sunday going into Monday.
Entre domingo a lunes.
Okay.
Oh wow, I'd forgotten this was the interview where the interpreter talks over the top of everyone all the way through. So, I will just pre-warn you, there's likely to be a bit of snark while we're looking at this interview.
What time did you get home Sunday night?
¿Qué hora se regresó el domingo por la noche?
Mi horario era hasta las... Yo salgo alrededor los domingos de las 11.
Sunday around 11.
Y acá llegué...
PM?
Por la
Sí,
noche.
sí, en la noche.
Okay.
Pero acá llegué como
Should probably get
11:30.
around 11:30, she thinks. 11:30 p.m.
So 11 or 11:30?
11:30 getting here.
Okay.
So already we have the translator basically screwing up and not listening and giving the answer of 11 p.m. when, in fact, had he listened properly, he would have heard that she said 11:30. Now, just a thought. I'm not sure based on the length of this video, if he will have time to do so. But my brother is an audio technician, and I may be able to get him to redo this and basically drop the level of the translator so that for those of you who are bilingual, I can put out possibly, don't hold me to this, but I can try and put out a cleaner version of this without the interpreter talking over the top. Obviously, for those of us who don't understand Spanish, it could be challenging, but for those of you who are bilingual, let me know if you want me to inquire about that.
Getting out of work.
All right. Was anybody here when you got home?
Si se encontraba alguien en ese sitio cuando usted llegó. Si había
Sí,
otra
sí.
persona. ¿Quién había?
Pues yo escuchaba cosas en el cuarto de arriba.
She said, yeah, she
Pero-
was hearing things upstairs.
Pero normalmente cuando yo llego a esa hora todos están durmiendo.
But normally, around that time, everyone's sleeping.
Okay, so her getting home at around 11:30 definitely fits in terms of the timeline of Jenn messaging Stefan at, I think, 11:39, telling him that Maddie needs to get to bed now. Now, again, I'm frustrated with this detective. But of course, it's possible that bits of the translation have been left out. We hear her mention that she could hear things upstairs, and normally around that time everyone is sleeping. Now here's a thought. Natalie claims that she can't hear a thing when she goes to bed because her television is blaring really, really loud. Now, Natalie has said, Angelica has said here that she could hear things upstairs, and she's actually qualified that by explaining that normally around this time everyone is sleeping, meaning that the things that she was hearing upstairs were not the normal sounds that you would hear when everyone is asleep. Where am I going with this? The inference there is that when everyone's asleep, she doesn't hear sounds upstairs. Her room is right next door to Natalie's room. For her to hear sounds upstairs and then say that normally around that time everyone is sleeping, the implication there is that clearly the sounds were loud enough for her to hear, and clearly they were not normal everyday sounds, which to me suggests that this whole story of having the television blaring is a complete utter load of BS. If she slept with the television running, then we wouldn't have Angelica here basically saying that she heard things upstairs at a time when normally everyone is sleeping. Because the extension of that is when everyone is sleeping, you're not going to hear sounds upstairs. And of course, unless he comes back to it later in the interview, because I just listened on a little bit, the detective doesn't ask her specifically what it was that she heard upstairs and how long those noises went for upstairs. And he didn't even ask, well, if everyone is normally sleeping, do you hear any regular sounds?
Okay. Did you physically see anybody?
Si físicamente viste algo.
No.
Okay. Do you know, when you came in, was her door open or shut? Jennifer's door open or shut?
Así. Tal cual así como estaba
So
ahora mismo.
just like that. It's cracked
Okay,
open.
so cracked open. Did you look inside?
No.
No.
Here's a novel concept. Given that Jen's door was open a crack, it didn't occur to you to ask her if Jen's light was on or off? It didn't occur to you to ask if she could hear any noise coming from Jen's room? I get that at this point in the investigation, their number one priority was Stephen Stearns. But it just feels like they really dropped the ball with regards to Jen Soto in terms of these interviews with the flatmates. You've got 3 individuals here from the one house who appear to have had minimal contact with each other after Maddie went, meaning that they would have been utterly perfect in terms of finding out truthful information, because they wouldn't have sat down and coordinated stories, meaning that had you actually made note of a few important things from previous interviews, you could have got some very useful testimony.
Okay. When you went upstairs, were the doors open or closed?
Close.
Closed. Okay.
Yo puedo entender un poco.
You can understand.
Yeah, we figured that out last time.
So, cuando haya dificultad,
Ah,
me
yo
vas a ver
te
yo.
sí, ok.
I'll contact when you guys are.
How did she know? Who did she know was actually here that night when she got home?
Cuando yo llego a casa, ¿quién sé que está acá? Bueno, esa noche Stefan, Mari, supongo, y Jen y Natalie con su bebé, con su niño.
So, dime otra vez, perdón, que no estaba.
Natalie,
So, Natalie,
su niño,
her kid.
Her son. Okay.
Jen, Stefan, o Jennifer, yo le digo Jen, Stefan y Mari.
So those are the people that she thinks usually.
Okay.
So he's asked her the question, who did she know was here that night when she got home? And she's included Stefan in the list. And now we can hope that there wasn't any lost in translation moment here. But that's about all we've got by the looks of it, because he didn't ask a clarifying question along the lines of, so on that actual night you knew Stefan was here, or did you find out afterwards that he was here? I think that's a really important question when we look at all the protestations from Natalie that she didn't hear a thing, she didn't see a thing. She had no idea Stefan was even there.
When she got home, what did you do when you got home?
¿Qué hago cuando llego a casa?
Esa noche que hiciste cuando llegaste.
Ok, esa
That
noche.
night, right?
Yo entré a mi cuarto, pues yo me cambio,
To her room, change.
me informé y me duché y luego
Shower.
me acosté a dormir.
And then she went to bed.
Okay. What time do you think you went to bed? And
Well, ¿qué hora piensa que se va a
2:30, pero yo no me duermo de una vez, o sea, como 2:30 a 1.
2:30 de la mañana, around 2:30 in the morning.
Okay. What time do you think you heard these noises coming from Stefan's room?
Todo ese tiempo que yo estaba por dormirme.
Okay. So, desde que llegaste o solo cuando estabas ya para dormirte?
No, desde que llegué.
Desde que llegaste?
Sí.
Okay. So, she's saying from the time she got home, I had her clarify to about the time she fell asleep.
So, again, translation-wise, I'd like to know if she specifically said that the sound was ongoing for the entire time, because that's what we've got in terms of translation. She went to bed around 2:30, and she heard the noises from the time she got home until the time that she went to sleep. In other words, 3 hours there was noises coming from room 4. It's possible that the noises could have continued after that, because basically it sounds like she fell asleep and the noises were still going. Now, here's what bothers me about Angelica saying she could hear noise from room 4. When we look at the room locations, her room is pretty much between Natalie's room and room 4. And just to show you locations of beds and things, admittedly, Angelica's bed is probably more on the room 4 side of her room than on the Natalie side of her room. But when we look at the layout of Natalie's room, the ensuite bathroom is the other side of the hallway, meaning that there's nothing dividing Angelica's room and Natalie's room. Those two rooms share a common wall. Natalie's television is on the opposite wall to Angelica's room, but she's claiming that she has her television blaring. So if that's truly the case, why was it so easy for Angelica to hear noises coming from room 4 for those 3 hours that she was awake? And why does she basically say that she was hearing noises upstairs, which normally she wouldn't do so because everyone would be asleep? And then the next question, why didn't this detective ask the simple question, were they the only noises that you heard?
Yo escuchaba, sí, yo escuché, desde que llegué yo escuchaba sonidos.
She was hearing noises.
Okay, can she explain the best that she can what those noises were?
Sonidos como, por ejemplo, algo así. ¿Puedo?
Sí, sí. Give an
Como
example.
cuando tú pones como ese tipo de sonido, como así, como que pusieras cosas en una mesa.
Like
algo
placing
así.
things on a table or something if you're putting something down.
Okay.
Kind of
Sí.
like that.
Any other noises that she may have heard?
Algún otro
People
No,
talking?
No, nunca escuché gente hablando.
sonido? Did not hear anyone talking.
Okay. Throughout the night, did you hear anybody walking up and down the stairs?
Que si en la noche alguien subió bajo las escaleras.
Sí, que si escuchaste
No, no
por
llegué
la
a
noche
escuchar.
alguien subiendo o bajando
No escuché.
No.
Después me quedé dormida, la verdad yo no escuché.
after she fell asleep. She said that she
Now again, for my resident translators, let me know if she said more than what the translator has conveyed. Because all he's saying here is that the noises were like setting things on a table or putting something down. But then the way she was doing that banging made me think that there might be more to the story there. So let me know if what she said actually matches what he has said. I think that's really telling that she's saying she didn't hear people talking and she didn't hear anyone going up and down stairs before she fell asleep. Now, he specifically asked her if she heard any other noises, which again would be where I would expect to hear the comment of, oh, well, Natalie had her TV running, but she doesn't say that. Now, it's possible that if Natalie was actually telling the truth, that it could be something that is so commonplace that she doesn't even think about it. But given that he has now circled back and asked again about noises, and asked specifically about any other noises, that is intended to trigger specific memories, intended to make her stop and think, is there anything else? So, what does it mean when she's saying she didn't hear people talking? Well, she got home at 11:30. She's talking about hearing banging noises and nothing else. Now, Jenn claims that she sent Stefan and Maddie upstairs to bed at 11 o'clock. According to the data on Maddie's phone went upstairs at 11:19, shortly before Angelica arrived home. Here's the thing that I find really, really interesting. Maddie's phone was placed on the charger at 11:38, which means it was taken upstairs. It was sitting there upstairs for 20 minutes before it was finally put on a charger. And 1 minute after the phone was put on a charger, Jenn sends a text, so this is 11:39, to Stefan telling him that Maddie needs to go to bed now. I've always questioned why she chose to message Stefan, but as far as we know, didn't message Maddie to say, you need to go to bed now, or good night, come and speak to me in the morning before you leave, anything like that. And now we're hearing that Natalie didn't hear any voices coming from room 4, just banging noises. Now, if there were no voices and Maddie's phone was put on the charger at 11:38, and apparently Angelica was home, and was I just saying Natalie before? If I mentioned Natalie just then, I meant Angelica in terms of hearing things. Angelica was home at the time that Maddie's phone was put on the charger, right? She was also home when Jenn texted Stefan to say Maddie needs to go to bed now. So why didn't she hear voices? Because you would presume that if Maddie's phone was put on its charger at 11:38, that there would have been some sort of conversation occurring in the room prior to that occurring, or around the time that occurred. So to me that says that Maddie was at the very least unconscious. The other important thing that she said here is no, she didn't hear anyone going up and down the stairs before she fell asleep at around 2:30. So this could be significant when it comes to trial. Because of Stefan's claims in his phone calls with his parents that he went downstairs and just, went for a stroll and played on his phone for a while and just lurked around the house for a while, and then went back and discovered that Maddie was no longer alive. Well, if they have narrowed down the timeline in terms of when Maddie was unalived. That could be very, very important evidence to basically show that Stefan's story is a load of BS.
Okay, what time did you wake up the next day, Monday?
9:30.
9:30.
Okay. What did you do after you woke up?
Bajé a tomar el desayuno.
Came down to make breakfast, basically.
Okay, was anybody here?
Él. Stefan.
Okay, here's where we are going to start to have problems with Angelica as a witness. Where she's saying here that she woke up between 9 o'clock and 9:30, and then she went downstairs to have breakfast. And he's asked her, was anyone there? And she says, Stefan. Now, if she went downstairs at around 9:30, she may have just caught Jenn before Jenn left for her appointment. But she wouldn't have seen Stefan because he didn't get back till 10:15. So her timeline is problematic. And this happens throughout her interview, and it happened in the previous interview. As she's consistent, she said the time of 9 to 9:30 in the previous interview, but it doesn't fit with the known timeline for Stefan and Jenn, which could basically open her up for major difficulties with the defence. Now, we know that she has been deposed, so I just hope that at the time that she did her deposition that she had perhaps had time to clarify her timeline. But even still, if in her deposition she's managed to alter the times so that they fit more with events, the defence is still going to have a go at her at trial.
Stuff volunteer.
Okay,
Yo lo vi.
what was he doing?
Él entraba a este cuarto, salía, subía, volvía a bajar, salía otra vez de la puerta. O sea, él estaba...
Come down, go out, come in,
Exacto, ese era su movimiento, volvía a salir y yo...
go out.
También comenté en la entrevista pasada que yo lo vi a él lavando ropa, eso me pareció muy extraño.
She said that in the prior interview she mentioned that he was washing clothing, which she found kind of strange.
Bueno, luego yo subí a mi habitación,
She went upstairs,
me quedé allí, luego volví a bajar para preparar mi
down again to
almuerzo.
make her supper.
Él estaba acá.
He was here.
Ujú.
Sometimes
What
he
time
had
was that?
Como a las 2,
around 2,
más o menos 1:30, 2 de la tarde.
around 1:32 p.m.
Okay.
So, unless the translator is missing out some important bits of information, then she's skipping around a bit with the timeline here. She's specifically said about heading down for breakfast and seeing Stefan there. Now, like I said, he didn't return to the complex till around 10:15. So that doesn't fit with her being, well, she got up at 9:30 and went downstairs for breakfast. So that's already problematic. And the detective's question was, what was he doing? Now, contextually, you would expect the answer to be with regards to what was he doing at that point in time. But we get the same again as we did in the previous interview, and it's really not clear which period of time she's talking about. because she talks about him going up and down and going out and coming in, and then prior to that he was washing clothing, and it was kind of strange. And then again we hear that he went upstairs, came down again, and I didn't catch what the translator said because it was so quiet. I've boosted this audio as much as I can, but I still didn't catch it. But now, when she's asked about what time that was, she's like around 1:30, 2 o'clock. Well, I'm going to zoom in on the bottom slide for the timeline so you can see what the problem is. So let's have a look at around 1:30, 2 o'clock. Stefan left the complex at 1:15. Around 1:30, he was actually out Old Hickory Tree Road. He was off changing a tyre. Jenn was still there, going by Jenn basically collecting Maddie's phone and everything. She left the complex at 2:39. Still isn't fitting in with Stefan being supposedly seen between 1:30 and 2 p.m. Stefan returns to the apartment at 2:47. That's, again, pretty much an hour out. She's more than an hour out. She's saying she saw him between 1:30 and 2, and yet he wasn't back at the apartment till 2:47. What we do have, though, and this is why I think that she's just kind of got her times a bit confused, because what she's saying actually matches with what they've got on surveillance. Stefan does go out to the dumpster 3 times that afternoon. You have him recorded at 3:24 putting items in the dumpster. 3:28, he immediately returns to the dumpster with more items. And then an hour later, he puts more items in the dumpster. So that seems to fit with what she's saying. But the question then is, was he washing clothing in the morning when she saw him? Or was that when he was fiddling around with tools? When exactly was he washing clothing? I don't know if she's being more specific and the translator's just not conveying enough detail, or if she's not being specific and the detective's not actually trying to establish a clear timeline. Her account could be really important. And this detective completely faffed up the interview, if you ask me.
Was Jennifer here?
Yo no la vi.
No.
Didn't see her.
Oh, didn't see her.
No la vi.
No sabes si estaba aquí.
No
No la
sé.
viste.
Yo no sé porque no la vi.
Doesn't know if she didn't see her.
Y pues la verdad es que yo nunca, o sea, como privado, pues yo no abro la puerta para ver si está o no.
It's private, so she didn't open the door to see if.
If Jennifer's here, like during the day on a normal day, is that door just like that, or is it open so Jenn can come and go?
Siempre está dentro de su habitación.
Pero lo que él pregunta es, en un día normal, y si ella está presente, ¿la puerta se mantiene cerrada o está abierta?
A veces la mantiene así y a veces abierta.
Sometimes, if she's here, sometimes it could be like that, or cerrado, me dices, o abierta.
Sí, o no completa, ella nunca la mantiene completamente cerrada, como algo así. Esa noche que yo llegué, la puerta estaba así cuando yo llegué en la noche.
Okay, she's definitely given a more detailed description than what the translator has just passed on. So he's asking her about Jenn being around, and she said she didn't open the door to see if Jenn was around. And he asks her about how the door would be if Jenn was around. Would it be like wide open or maybe closed? And here's where she's giving a lot of answers. And all we're getting is snippets from the translator. When he was saying something like, sometimes if she's here, it will be like that. Now clearly, there was a visual display of what like that looks like. But given this is an audio recording, you would think that the detective would at the very least offer verbal clarification so that it is recorded. But there's not even an acknowledgement of that. And then we get back to when she got home that night, the door was just ajar or like that. Please, 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 if you understood what she was saying, can you let me know what we've missed here? Because I'm certain we've missed something.
Y en la mañana,
In the morning,
pues él abría, o sea, él abría la puerta, pero la volvía a dejar así. O sea,
he,
yo
he
no...
would, again, this is Stefan.
Estefan.
He would open the door, go in, but he would leave it like that, and then when he come out, leave it like that as well.
I'm so confused. If we look at the timeline, and he's saying, and she's saying in the morning Stefan would essentially go in and close the door behind him and then come back out again. I don't think she's talking about morning as in before Stefan supposedly took Maddie to school. I think she's talking about the part of the morning when she was downstairs making breakfast, meaning that Stefan appears to have been going in and out of Jenn's room while Jenn was absent. If that is indeed the period of time that she is referring to, unless it is a general statement of if Stefan's around, this is what he would do. But I don't think that is the case because Stefan hadn't been there for 3 months. So I think she had to have been talking about the period of time during the morning when Stefan was there, which is the period of the time when Jenn wasn't there. So we do need to have another look at this timeline for a sec. So she's got to be talking about the period of time between roughly 10:15 and 5 minutes to 11. That 40-minute block of time when he was there, because that's the only time during the morning when he was there and she was awake. So what was he doing going in and out of Jenn's room in that 40-minute period of time when Jenn wasn't there? If that actually is what she was saying at that point in time.
Okay. Is that normal, friend?
So it's normal.
De que no sé.
She's not sure.
Si la puerta está... Siempre permanece así,
The door's always like that.
muy poco abierta, pero a veces
Rarely
cambiaba.
open.
A veces podía estar abierta o a veces
Sometimes it could be
podía
open,
estar de ese modo, pero nunca completamente cerrada.
but never completely closed.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to be upfront here. Here's where having ADHD becomes problematic for me. I find it almost impossible to actually understand what is being said by the translator here when he is talking quietly and over the top of Angelica. It's, it's something that a lot of people with ADHD struggle with. It's like if you're in a restaurant and people are having a conversation, because there's so much going on, your brain can't focus in on the one thing that's the most important thing to focus in on. And you feel like you're actually completely deaf because you can't follow a conversation. And I'm really, really struggling to follow what this translator is saying because the audio is quiet and because basically he's talking over the top of what she's saying. And of course you couple that with the fact that he's clearly giving visual representations for some things which are not being repeated anywhere in the audio. So she's been asked if it's normal for Stefan to go in and out of Jenn's room. And she says she's not sure. And then we finally get an answer that the door is always like that. So presumably the door is always just propped shut and that it's rarely open. But honestly, the rest of what was said there, I tried and I could not pick it up.
How long have you lived here again?
2 years.
2 years.
2 years and a half.
All right.
2 años y medio.
How were their sleeping arrangements between Jennifer, Maddie, and Stefan?
¿Cómo era, sí, cómo era la situación para dormir? Los arreglos, básicamente, para qué?
For Jennifer, Maddie,
Jennifer,
and Stefan.
Maddie y Stefan.
Bueno,
Que usted sepa.
al principio de la relación ellos dormían los tres juntos.
All three of them sleep together.
Luego como a mitad de relación, más o menos, no a mitad, no sé cuánto tiempo decirles de verdad, por cuestión de privacidad para ellos dos como pareja, decidieron como hacer esta parte para la nena. Y pero ella nunca dormía y no le gustaba.
But she would never sleep there. She didn't like it.
Igual dormía en la habitación.
She would sleep in that room right there.
Okay, I really should have thought to try and add subtitles at the beginning of this video instead of having a typical ADHD meltdown over the fact that I couldn't understand what was being said. So now you guys are probably way ahead of me on this because obviously the subtitles are now all over the entire video. So the bits that I've already covered will have had subtitles added. I did look back at the section that I just covered before this and saw that she did say sometimes it could be open. But, whoa, what an admission. I was just on the point of going, I'm not sure how to keep tackling this interview because I can't catch everything that's being said. But I'm glad I stopped and added in the subtitles because she knew they were sleeping together. He's asked her about the sleeping arrangements and I couldn't understand what the translator was saying here. But then with the help of the subtitles, I finally got it. At the beginning of the relationship, all three were sleeping together. Angelica moved into that townhouse 2 years prior to when everything happened. She moved into that townhouse when Maddie was already 11. And she knew that all three of them were sharing a bed. Didn't she think that was inappropriate? And how is it that she knew all this and supposedly Natalie didn't? Again, I'm calling BS on Natalie. So, at the beginning, all three were sleeping together. Halfway through, for the sake of privacy, Maddie got her own room. But she didn't like it, so she would sleep in that room right there. Again, I wish there was some verbal clarification, but let's think about this. Where's the most comfortable place for her in that townhouse? I would imagine that having been in the process of packing up to move out, that she probably would have been more comfortable conducting the interview upstairs in her own space. So is she actually saying Maddie would sleep in that room right there? Is she talking about room 4? Have we actually been told the wrong version of the story? Because when she says Maddie would sleep in that room right there, it certainly doesn't sound like she's saying that Maddie went back to sleeping with Jenn and Stefan. Is this why room 4 was kept empty? Was Maddie actually sleeping in room 4? And then Stefan was going upstairs during the night after the flatmates had gone to bed. I definitely need a bit of additional translation on this, that's for sure. Because it could be that the story we've been given isn't quite accurate. In which case, what makes that even more disturbing is Jenn saying to Stefan, she's not sleeping with me anymore, I can't risk it. Does that coincide with when Maddie got her own room? And did Jenn send Maddie to sleep upstairs so that Jenn wouldn't be caught in any videos or photos? Now, I'm just speculating here. And it may be that I've misinterpreted what has been said here. But honestly, out of every person in the house, the only issue I have with Angelica comes down to translation. I do believe that she's got no dog in this fight. She honestly sounds like she is telling the truth. The problem here is that things are being lost in translation. But she definitely said specifically that Maddie wouldn't sleep in her own fake bedroom, so instead she would sleep in that room right there. She didn't say instead she just went back to sleeping with Jenn and Stefan. And you also had the qualifier at the beginning where she said at the start of the relationship all three would sleep together. So it appears that at some point in time when Maddie's fake room was put there, that Maddie may not have been continuing to sleep in a bed with Jenn and Stefan, but was perhaps sent to sleep somewhere else. The only other room where she could have slept was room 4. And yet we're told that Maddie doesn't sleep on her own. Well, this makes things really interesting. Definitely let me know if I have misinterpreted this, or if there is something important in the translation that has been missed out.
Have you ever saw Maddie and Steven going into Steven's bedroom by themselves? Yes.
¿Puedes repetirme la pregunta, por
Si en
favor, para
algún,
estar seguro?
sí, sí, en algún momento usted vio a Mary y Steven yendo a la habitación de Steven.
Sí.
Sí, yes.
Okay. Would Jennifer be here when that happened?
Jennifer se encontraba aquí cuando eso pasaba.
Sí.
Okay, did I just not hear this before? Or did I forget? Have you ever seen Maddie and Stefan going into Stefan's room by themselves? Yes. That was clear as day. She was aware of Maddie and Stefan going into Stefan's room, and yet Natalie knew nothing. Natalie saw nothing. How is this explainable? You can't tell me that one flatmate was aware of all this, and the other flatmate, who's supposed to be closer to Jenn, who claimed she was looking out for the kids, didn't see a thing. She has just said that she saw Stefan and Maddie going into Stefan's room by themselves, and yes, Jenn was there at the time. She's essentially proven Natalie as being a whopping great liar, hasn't she? Because she clearly knows about, at the very least, Maddie sleeping with Jenn and Stefan, which Natalie claimed never happened. She knows about Maddie going into Stefan's room alone with him, and she's talking about that in terms of Jenn being there.
Okay. Did she ever say why they would do that?
Que si en algún momento Jennifer decía por qué ellos, Stefan y Maddie, hacían eso.
Para ella era normal, como él nunca le iba a hacer daño a su niña.
For that was normal for her because he would never hurt her daughter.
That was normal for her because he would never hurt her daughter. It was normal for Maddie to go upstairs with Stefan and be alone in his room with him. Not, oh, it happened fewer times than I could count on one hand, or it happened fewer times than I could count on my 2 hands. Oh, I never felt comfortable with it, but I eventually caved in. I had a rule for the longest time that they couldn't have sleepovers. And what does Angelica say? It was normal.
Belén, o sea, incluso una vez tuvimos una conversación
So she actually had a conversation
acerca de eso.
about that.
Y la mamá de Jenn
And
siempre le reclamaba a Jenn por qué dejaba
for
eso.
attention, why would you do that?
Y ella me lo comentó en una conversación privada
She
entre
mentioned
nosotras
it to
dos
her
como
in a
amigas.
private conversation between friends.
Y ella me dijo que para ella él nunca le iba a hacer
She
daño
told her
a su
that
hija.
because he would never harm her daughter.
Para ella no, eso era normal porque nunca
So
él
to
le iba a
her
hacer
it was
daño.
normal because he would never harm her.
Okay, this is really frustrating. Even with a transcript, I'm struggling here. So, it seems to me that this translator really doesn't know what he's saying, because it's not making sense. He's not explaining who is saying what when, who the messages occurred between. Now, please correct me. What I am getting from this, we definitely know now that Yolanda was aware of the situation. That is definite in what is being said here. That at one time there was a conversation with Yolanda. Now what he's saying is then really confusing, and maybe I'm just not hearing correctly, but here's my translation of what was intended, and hopefully those of you who can actually understand Angelica can correct me or confirm what I'm saying. So I believe that Jenn asked Angelica why she would have told Yolanda and said that it was a private conversation between friends. In other words, that it wasn't Yolanda's business, and that for her it was normal for Maddie to go up into Stefan's room because she believed Stefan would not hurt Maddie. Now, it's possible that he also could have been saying that Jenn told Yolanda those things. So if someone can please clarify that for me before my brain explodes. But this is still critical information. Regardless of how you choose to translate this, basically what we're being told here is that Yolanda knew. She knew. She didn't like Stefan. And yet she knew that Maddie was going upstairs alone into Stefan's room with him. And she just let it go. So basically now we know that Yolanda knew that Maddie was going up into Stefan's room alone with him. Stephanie knew, Natalie knew, and Angelica knew. Now I would imagine that if Yolanda knew, isn't it also possible that Juan knew? And we have this excuse that, oh, well, Jenn just completely trusted him. It wasn't anyone's business, essentially, because Jenn completely trusted him. So they just went, oh, well, okay, fine, let's just forget about it. with an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old girl. What's wrong with these people?
Okay. What can she tell me about if Jennifer's taking medication?
De que tú sepas que Jennifer tomaba medicamentos.
Sí, claro.
Yes. ¿Qué medicamentos?
Bueno, sé que son un montón de medicamentos, pero no sé específicamente qué
She knows
medicamentos.
a lot of them, but she doesn't know specifically what.
Sí, y para dormir también.
She knows to sleep.
A las 9:30 ella ya, porque se tomaba su medicina y así estábamos hablando y ella completamente se tiene que ir a
While they
dormir.
were talking, she would just kind of start dozing off. She had to go to bed.
Was that every night she would do that?
Sí, ella toma sus medicamentos todos los días.
Okay. Where would Maddie and Stefan be when this was going on?
Cuando eso estaba pasando, que se tomaba el medicamento, ¿dónde se encontraba Maddie y Stefan?
Igual acá en casa.
En la casa.
Sí.
Pero específicamente, no sabe en qué parte de la casa.
No,
She's
no.
here at the house, but she doesn't know where exactly in the house.
So Jenn was medicating herself as early as 9 or 9:30, and then as soon as she was medicated, she was taking herself to bed. And Angelica is saying she doesn't know whereabouts Stefan and Maddie were when that occurred. She's relaying an instant or instances where she's been talking to Jenn at around 9 o'clock, 9:30 at night, and Jenn's basically gone, I have to take my meds and go to bed. And Angelica is saying she doesn't know where Maddie and Stefan were on those occasions. Well, that to me sounds really, really bad. It seems that Jenn was basically giving Stefan free rein. She claims we always made sure we had to watch Maddie take her medication. But if Angelica is saying here she doesn't know where Maddie was on those occasions, well, either Maddie was already medicated and knocked out, or Jenn was allowing Stefan to have control of Maddie's medications, which would explain a heck of a lot.
Okay. Did Jennifer ever tell her?
Ahí dice el señor Juan, seguro. Perdón, señor Juan.
Okay, so. Is it at any point did she
At any point did Jennifer?
En algún momento
Okay, well, that entire section was redacted out, but I think we can gather what in particular he was asking her with regards to if Jenn ever told her a particular thing. Would be interesting to know what her answer to that was. Now, you may be hearing some slightly different noises in the background that you've not heard before, because Amira and the pup have learnt to play with each other, and they are basically wrestling, and what you're hearing is that sort of play wrestling, growling kind of noise.
Yeah. Did she ever talk to Jennifer about Jennifer and Stefan's sexual relationship?
que si Jennifer habló con usted en algún momento de su relación personal de ella con Stefan.
Sí, en algún momento pues llegaba a comentarme.
Occasionally she did.
What would she say?
¿Qué te contó ella?
¿Qué me contó? Como sobre su relación sexual, que no era tan a menuda. En una oportunidad me lo llegó a comentar.
It wasn't very often, she told her at one point.
¿Qué más? A ver. Ellos tenían pues dificultades también, tenían problemas,
Difficulties, they had problems.
pero esos son los comentarios, como que no era tan a menudo la actividad
That
sexual.
was it. Appeared to not be frequent.
Okay, so the subtitles don't work every time. Obviously, when you are relying on any sort of program, it's not going to catch every bit of sound. But from what I'm gathering, she was saying that yes, her and Jenn did have discussions about it. Jenn said that these things happened infrequently, or at least not often, between Jenn and Stefan. And I mean, really, we don't need all those details, but I find it interesting that, again, we had Natalie claiming that no, her and Jenn never spoke about that sort of stuff. And yet, you would imagine that Jenn and Natalie would have been closer than Jenn and Angelica. But it sounds like they've had numerous conversations about how relationships were between Jenn and Stefan.
Okay. Did she ever say that bothered her?
En algún momento ella dijo que eso le molestaba a ella.
Ella ya no quería estar con él.
That she didn't want to be with him anymore.
Okay.
And of course, this ties in with Jenn telling the detectives that she essentially no longer had any interest in Stefan.
When they broke up,
Cuando se separaron,
how did that go?
¿cómo pasó eso?
Cuando ellos rompieron, yo no recuerdo en qué momento Stefan se había ido de casa,
Stefan left the house.
pero yo siempre estuve pendiente cómo te sientes, y yo a ella yo la veía bien.
She saw that she was okay.
A ella la veía bien, pero sí, por lo menos, lo que llegué a notar como que era un poco extraño, que cuando Mari tenía alguna discusión con la niña, porque por hacer sus cosas o algo, y ella lloraba, lo que ella
Who would
quería,
cry?
¿Quién lloraba? Perdón.
que si tenían alguna discusión entre Jennifer y Mari, y la niña terminaba llorando, ella siempre quería hablar era con Stefan.
Okay, so whenever they had an argument, Maddie would always try to talk to Stefan about it.
Whenever who would have an argument?
Jenn and Maddie.
So I think that first bit was her actually saying that Jenn seemed fine with Stefan moving out. But then we have confirmation yet again of basically whenever Jenn and Maddie had an argument, that Maddie would go running to Stefan. This is classic grooming behaviour. He basically set himself up as Maddie's go-to. And you can bet that he made sure that there were plenty of arguments between Jenn and Maddie. So the question, of course, arises, is that what happened on the Sunday night? Stefan turned up. Maddie was upset about Jenn not going to her party. Stefan commiserated with her rather than try to at least, provide some sort of understanding so that Maddie didn't want to speak to Jenn when Jenn got her home. And Maddie never went back downstairs. Or it could also be that Maddie was already rugged by the time Jenn got home. But whichever way you look at it, that is our confirmation that Stefan set himself up as not the go-between, but as the go-to. She's not saying Maddie went to him and he mediated. No, it sounds like Maddie went to him, clearly about behaviour that he had at some point in time encouraged, and that would definitely explain why Jenn was so resentful of Maddie. Because Stefan basically put a wedge between the two of them.
O sea, como cosa de madre, como haz tus cosas, no haces esto.
Cuando hubo una discusión entre Jenn y Maddie, Maddie siempre iba a buscar a...
Que ella quería llamar por teléfono a Stefan.
So whenever Jenn and Maddie had an argument, like anything parenting related or whatnot, Maddie would want to call Stefan and
para desahogarse, pues me imagino.
To vent about it, what she was imagining.
Okay, so I apologise for what's going on with the closed captions here. They are not attaching themselves to the actual video in the way that they are meant to. There are so many glitches with InShot right now which just do my head in, I have to tell you. So what was being said there was essentially what we heard from Deb Stearns, that when Maddie and Jenn were having an argument, Maddie would want to bring up Stefan. It breaks my heart hearing that, because it just shows that he was making her so reliant on him. And that's how he continued to get away with these things for all this time. Now, this is actually an incredibly short video. However, it's getting late in the day. It's been another day of distractions. And aside from that, I think what I want to do is finish here and then redo this uncut video with Angelica, so that I have a version with the subtitles attached to the right spots that I can use for the rest of this series. So I do sincerely apologise. I know this has not been my greatest effort, and for 2 days worth of work, it's a pretty dismal offering. However, I will get myself properly sorted out. I'll get this one out this evening and actually spend a bit of time trying to respond to people's comments, because I'm so far behind with that. And then tomorrow I'll get back to this with the subtitles in the right location, and hopefully with me feeling a bit more energised and a bit more able to take in what is being said. So on that note, thanks for listening. I will say, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe. But I will just point out, this is really not one of my best videos. So you are well and truly within your rights if you go, nah, I'm not subscribing to her. She's really not that great. However, if you are new, can I ask you to come back tomorrow and listen to the next video in this series? And hopefully I can convince you to subscribe. On that note, please hit the like button and please leave a comment, and I will catch you in the next one.
I've been good to